Ashley with My Black Mommy Magic. Welcome to Mommy Monday. And I today have a very special guest with me, is Andrea Ewalefo with me today about school and how she came to get her MBA JD and just have some mommy chat and hope that we can inspire and motivate you guys today.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. I'm a mother to a 13-year-old son who just finished up 8th grade. So he'll be entering high school this coming fall. Like you said, I'm doing the JD MBA program at Tulane. It's the 3-year accelerated program. So fortunately, I got to start with you and graduate, and I'll get to graduate with you as well. I also own a home, and I purchased my home right before starting school. It's a duplex, and so I Airbnb the other side as a way to make income. And I'm in the process of working on a blog and just always trying to find new and creative ways to add different streams of income.
That is awesome. So let's kind of jump right into it. You and I both really kind of connected from the very beginning. We have several things in common that are a little different from our classmates. Both of us are non-traditional students, and both of us are mothers, and so Black mothers. And so from the very beginning, there was always like that, like, I see you, you see me, like always. So just kind of talk to me about why you decided to come back to school.
Yeah, it's been a really long journey to get where I am. When I graduated from my undergrad program at Texas A&M, I actually had zero desire to ever go back to school. That's the one thing I swore, was that I would never go back to school. So kind of funny how life comes at you in that way. But right after graduating from undergrad, I had my son Elijah, and he was my priority from the beginning. So I really focused on careers and opportunities that would allow me to have the time freedom that I needed to take care of him. It right about the time he was 2, I became a single mother, and it's just been he and I ever since. So that's been the juggling act that I've had, for the last 11 years, supporting him financially, mentally, emotionally, etc., and as well as working. Now, I moved to New Orleans in 2014. That was about the turning point for me. I decided that my son was old enough that he didn't really need me too much anymore, and I wanted to find a way to give back to my community in some way, shape, or form. And my first opportunity to do that was through Teach for America. I came across finding out about the organization and what they were about. I really liked the mission and the vision that they had to help, create educational equality across America. That's what moved me out to New Orleans in 2014. And I had a great time teaching high school seniors in math for 3 years. But through that time, I realized that there was a couple things. I loved teaching, but I found myself being drawn more to the advocacy part of education than the day-to-day in the classroom. Of course, we're placed as a TFA core member, we're placed in schools that aren't doing very well. And there's a lot that you see. And so for me, I just found myself trying to advocate for the students, advocate for the parents, whatever it was I could, to call out anything that I saw that I didn't feel was appropriate or okay for our children. And so through that time, I really felt that there was more that I could do to give back to my community. I felt that there was maybe a different angle that I could approach this.
Right.
And I really started to think back to all of the things that I love and that I'm passionate about, which is helping people, business, entrepreneurship. I noticed just how entrepreneurial my students were and their families were, whether it was raising money for senior budgets or prom, etc. And yet at the same time, I couldn't help but notice that in New Orleans specifically, where there's, we're a predominantly Black community, a Black city, that most of the businesses in the city are receiving revenues, or the revenues are being transitioned to predominantly white businesses, even though Blacks make up 60% of the city and 40% of all small businesses. They only receive 2% of total sales receipts.
Wow.
And I saw that, right. I thought that was crazy. And just as I thought more about how I could help to create more educational equity in New Orleans, in Louisiana, in the country, I realized that financial stability plays a huge role, whether it's on the individual level with families and students who, students who don't have enough food to eat or a roof over their head, those basic needs, they're not going to thrive in the classroom. And then schools that are located in neighborhoods that are of lower socioeconomic status are not going to receive the funding that they need to be successful, since for whatever reason right now, education is funded through property taxes and based on your zone. So I thought, if we could raise the overall value and wealth of the families, of Black families across New Orleans, that would raise property values, that would increase funding to schools, that would put students and children in much better situations to receive their education. And I just saw an overall benefit if there was a way to help Black businesses receive more of the market share in this city than they currently do. And so that's what drove me into this path of, well, I really need to learn more about business, but I definitely need to learn more about law, because everyone, feels like they can learn a little business if they just roll up their sleeves and get into it. But you won't find many people who feel confident about the law unless they've got a JD.
Oh, no.
And I thought I could be way more beneficial or helpful to my community if I had that JD. And the MBA was more to have a better understanding of how business works, how to start, scale, launch businesses, etc.
What other kind of advantages did you see with getting your MBA and your JD at the same time? And have you had any success leveraging that so far?
Yeah, so getting the MBA at the same time has been really interesting, especially this past year during our 2L year. I was technically in the business school, so most of my classes were business classes, and then I'd have 1 or 2 law classes each semester. And I would say the most benefit that I got education-wise was this most recent spring semester, because I was able to take business law classes like income tax and business enterprises while I was taking my business classes in the business school. And the way everything I was learning was just intertwined and being integrated was so phenomenal. Like, I finally felt like I didn't have to split my brain, when I entered one building or the other, like, oh, put the law hat on, put the business hat on. It's like for this one semester, it was like, yes, everything I'm learning over there, I can bring over here. Everything I'm learning over there, I can bring over here. And it just felt really good, because that was what drew me to both degrees, was the fact that law infiltrates every aspect of our lives, but it's very integral in business, corporate America, etc. And so I was finally starting to see that for the first time. And then I've seen other benefits for it as well, particularly being interested in corporate law. There are not many people of color who are interested in going the corporate transactional route, and I've seen that as being like, I go to networking events, in the interview rooms, I am the only person sitting up in there usually as a person of color. And even when I've talked to recruiters or other attorneys, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. We don't get enough people of color who want to come through and are interested in transactional work. Everyone wants to go be a litigator, be in the courtroom. So I saw that as a huge advantage. because there are some firms out there that are focused on diversity, that are truly interested in, doing more for making their firm look like the city that they live and work in and the clients that they serve. And so having these interests and pursuing both of these degrees, I felt just allowed me to have a little bit more of an advantage coming into this space and saying, yeah, I'm interested here.
Do you feel like you plan to go the business route, and be like a CEO, or like start your own business, or like whatever? Do you plan to go like a firm route, or do you plan to mix both and hang your own shingles and do your own law firm after school?
No, it's a great question. Full disclosure, when I was applying for school, the plan was to 100% go the business route. I wanted to pursue a consulting, and I was merely getting the JD just so that I could say I had one,
Yeah.
and because I felt like people would take me a little more seriously if I did. But I had no desire to practice law in any way, shape, or form. And then my 1L year of law school, all of a sudden, I just found myself really interested, not only like in the classes I was taking and the information I was learning, but the way they were teaching us how to think. The way you have to relearn how to read something, how to interpret words. Every word has a meaning. All of that just resonated with me, and I loved uh, how the law seemed to function. And so it was probably about first semester of 1L year that I decided to pivot and pursue the JD career path with the MBA as my tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
So yeah, the plan is to go work practicing law for a firm here in New Orleans and kind of take it from there.
Okay. And the good thing about what you're pursuing is that you have options. So, like you said, that's in your tool belt. And so, should you ever want to pivot and do something else, or add on to what you're doing there, you have the skills already there, and you can just do that. You have them at your disposal. So, I think that's awesome. You talked about there not being a lot of people of color, I know specifically women of color, within the route that you are going. So to like law firms, or maybe like even medium to larger size law firms. And
Mhm.
so talk about how you plan to like, do you foresee issues with that? How you plan to navigate that? How do you feel about that? I mean, just pick a question with that, really.
Sure. So that has been something that's been at the forefront of my mind through this whole process. I knew when I decided to pursue a graduate degree in general that I was going to be entering a space where there was going to be less people that looked like me. And the further I go, that's more of how it's going to seem. So, the firms that I'm going to be working with, I'm super excited about it. They're all very progressive. We know that in the legal community, I think, 2% of attorneys are African American, 0.7% of all partners are Black women. So we're not looking at a lot here, but if you have a firm that has 5%, 10%, that was my focus. And the firms that I'll be working with do have that representation.
For Black women in these spaces, I think we do have another layer on to all of this, because we have our hair as a thing as well. And you're a natural girl. I am a perm girl, mostly going natural again. Woo. See,
Yeah.
so we're taking it one hairstyle at a time. That's
Yes.
that's all I can do. And
Yes.
so with that, like that's always a thing for me. I'm gonna just keep it real.
Mhm.
I plan, and we're kind of late, but both of us are in our last year of law school.
Yes.
And so we graduate next May 2021. And so I also plan to go the firm route. And so for me, that is always a thing. Like,
No, it's real. It's real. I mean, that has been ingrained in us for so long that these are legitimate concerns. And it's still in the news, students not being able to go to school because of their natural hair, women getting fired because of their natural hair. So it's very legitimate, what you're talking about. And completely honest with you, when I know that it's time to interview, I don't get as creative as I like to do with my hair. So if I'm in the process of doing a style, like braids like you have right now, I'll make sure to get my hair color, natural looking braids, something simple. The way that I kind of work with that, because I don't ever want to not be true to myself, is that yes, I will play a more conservative route in the interview process, because the reality is, Black woman or not, person of color or not, there are too many little idiosyncratic things that a potential employer could use against you to not choose you for a job, right? And so the last thing I want is to give some arbitrary reason that has nothing to do with how I'll perform in the office. So I'm nice, cleaned up, very simple suit and hair. If my hair is in its full natural state, it's usually up in a big poof bun, or, I've got my twist like I do like this, or I have braids or Senegalese twist or something like that, all in my natural hair. But when the summer comes and I have my summer internships, that's where I'll play around a little bit with my hairstyle, because it is a testing process. I want to see if my hair is going to be the subject of a conversation. I want to know if anyone's going to feel some type of way about how I want to play around with my hair, because that's the time to figure that out.
Right.
When you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you.
So what you are referring to is, in law school, you go to law school during the actual school year, so fall or summertime. Students normally get internships if you want to get some sort of legal experience, and so you get an internship with the firm. And a lot of times, summertime, what Andrea is referring to is that it's like a 6-week interview, pretty much. So like you spend the entire summer they're checking out you to see if you can fit in with their firm culture, and you're kind of interviewing them in a sense of like, is this somewhere that I really want to work? So that's what you're kind of referring to. So you will kind of play around over the summer so that you can kind of interview them in the sense of like, do I want to work here? Like, is this going to be an environment where I'll actually feel comfortable? I'll also talk about one thing that I really admire about you, okay? So I've known Andrea a couple years now, and ever since I've known her, she does not take no. Like, it's like they said no, that really means maybe. Like, let's figure out how to do this. And I love that. I've told you this before, that I admire that about you. So I want you to talk about like where did that come from?
I want to say that I really picked up that mindset in college. My best friend at the time, she has the same name, Andrea. She was like the complete opposite of me, in the sense of she had all this confidence and, knew who she was, and just like walked with her shoulders up and head held high. And I was just like, how do you do this? Like, I don't get it. We're the same age. And she just taught me a lot about like how to just change your mindset, right? Like, understand that if you focus on the things that you don't want, that's what's going to happen. Focus on what you do want, and that's what's going to happen. And not to mention my experience with businesses, starting businesses, having entrepreneurial friends. I've gone to tons of conferences in my lifetime, and, I've been in sales. And one of the things you learn there is that no doesn't mean no, it just means not yet. And it just means like that you need to ask a different day or ask a different way. These are the little things that I've picked up. And so I've really taken that to heart in everything that I do, especially when I know that I am qualified for something or capable of being able to do something. And there's no reason why anyone else should have that than me. You
Right.
know, if I truly believe that and understand that, then yeah, you're not going to be able to stop me. I'm going to work my way through to figure
Right.
out how to get this. And if I ultimately don't get it, then, you know, my faith, I believe in God, and I truly believe that he has chosen to close that door because he has something else
Yeah.
in store for me, and he's never let me down. That's always been the case.
That's
So like, especially in this law school space, right, I sat down and really prayed about stepping away from a career, stepping away from 3 years of salary, you know, that cost benefit analysis. Like, not only am I not going to make money, but I'm going to be incurring 6 figures of debt.
right.
Is that worth it to go back to school and completely change my trajectory and go this route? And so after a lot of prayer, after a lot of consideration, you know, ultimately I felt like God said, yes, this is the route you want to go. And he knew what my goal was for taking this path. You know, it was to get on the other side of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be real frank with you for a minute. It was to get on the other side of this thing, making triple what I was making before I came in. There
Right.
was no other option was
Right.
going to be acceptable for me
Right.
to
Right.
take this journey. And choosing to stay in New Orleans and saying that, there were people on staff, the deans at our school, that I said that to them, and they were like, you don't make that kind of money in New Orleans. Like, nobody does. And I said, well, I will,
Yeah.
because I will. You know, and maybe you
Right.
never did, but
Right.
baby, like, I done set a goal and it's gonna happen. And lo and behold, I had a number in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what the salaries were in this. I didn't know what standard salaries were. I didn't know what expectations were. I had a number in my head, the only number that would make sense in order for me to get the debt paid off, for
Right.
me to put my son through college, the only number that would work that I had to make starting. And
Mm-hmm.
I've already been offered a job with that salary.
Look at that.
That's how God works.
Oh, girl. It really is awesome. Like, really, it is awesome. And I think that even if you hadn't been offered that, you would get there anyway, because you are like a by any means necessary type of person.
Yes.
So if you had
Yes.
to like start a business from scratch and work full time, like, you would do it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so,
Yes.
like, I think that's just so awesome.
This is just one of those many situations where God can turn anything into his blessing. You know, a lot of people like to use the phrase, everything happens for a reason. And I went to, I think I was at a conference or a seminar or camp or something like that, like over a decade ago. And the person speaking said, that is not a factual statement, and it's not biblical. Okay, everything doesn't happen for a reason. God does not want pain and suffering for his children. That is not his intention. That is not his desire. It happens
Mhm.
because we live in a simple world, etc. But, and the phrase that I use now is, everything can be used by God to bless you.
Right.
Okay. And so it's a whole different mindset when
Yes.
you realize that God didn't want this pain to happen, but he'll bless the
Me.
situation,
Right.
right? He's
Right.
going to turn it to good. And that's what I can look forward to. And so, all that to say, like, God didn't want coronavirus sweeping through and
Right.
taking people out, but because of it, firms had to make different adjustments and do things they had to do. The firm just decided they were going to extend job offers to everyone immediately.
That's
It's
so
like, look, don't
and I
stress about the summer. Don't.
oh, I'm gonna go into our, like, what would you do? Okay.
Okay.
So your son, you said your son is starting his first year of high school coming up this next year, right?
Yes.
So he comes to you and says, he graduates from high school and he says, you know, Mom, all this money that you saved up for college, don't worry about it. I'm not going to go the traditional route. I'm not going to go to school any further, just finish high school, and I just want to start a business. What would be your advice to him and why?
Okay. So,
Because you have an MBA, and like
yeah, yeah.
you just gave this whole spiel about how business is so important and you need to know. And
Yeah. So the thing is, this is a hard one for me because there's no real gut reaction, right? I know that there's a lot of people, particularly in the Black community, who are super focused and hyper focused on go to school, get your education, you know, get that degree by all means necessary. I mean, my father's Nigerian. If anybody understands the Nigerians out there, okay, that's probably why I finally decided to go back, and then not one, but 2 degrees at the same time. It's in the blood. So with all that to say, I truly value education, and I want my son to go to college to just get a degree. I don't care what it's in, but just get a degree because it opens a ton of doors. But if he said I didn't want to go, I wanted to just start a business, I would say, okay, I want you to present to me your executive summary and your full business plan. And then you're going to do a pitch for me. And I'm going to bring together, you know, I'll pull whatever connections I have that are in the business world to come and listen. And I would tell him, if we believe you've got a viable opportunity here and that you're prepared for it, I will support you. Okay. And then I'd also talk about alternative options like trade schools, learning, going to do an intensive coding program so he could be a coder. You know, college, 4-year college is not the only way to go about being successful, but you're going to get the degree eventually. Okay. If it's online or whatever, like, you're going to have to get the degree.
Right. So how you were able to juggle a 13-year-old while being, again, pursuing your MBA and your JD, and what that looked like, I guess.
Working full time as a teacher, he was 8 years old when we first moved here. There was a lot of juggling going around, and I had to, you know, bring down my wall, break down my barriers, humble myself to really create a community, a village that could help me. And I learned the importance of having a village that could help you. And so those 3 years really cultivated me into becoming the type of person and the type of mom that was more comfortable with asking for help and being honest when things were just too much, right? So I think that really helped a lot, but it was also the conversations that I had with him. You know, he was just as much a part of the decision-making process for me to go back to school, you know, as I was. Because wherever I chose to go would ultimately be where he was going to go to high school, because I was going to stay and work wherever that was. And so we talked about it together. We talked about what it would look like. We set expectations. And then, like I said, I purchased a home right before school started, and that was very intentional. Buying the house so we could have that stability. I didn't want a landlord over my head or worrying about rent randomly going up or anything like that. I wanted to be able to control that type of environment. And then buying the duplex was to generate income in the process. I specifically chose a home that was within a mile of school, both of our schools, so that we could ride our bikes and cut back on any additional needs he may have from me to get him where he needed to go. So, but we really just work as a team. And I've learned to even be vulnerable to him, to say, look, I'm stressed out right now. It's finals. I'm going to need you to not talk to me for a few days. You know, it's like I feel the guilt as a mom. It's like, I want to spend time with you, but then I let him know, like, honey, you know, I got ADHD, I have anxiety, like, you know, I'm working through these things. And it's like, I want to spend time with you. And so if you try to spend time with me, I will be distracted into spending time with you. And I need
Right,
you
right.
to not do that so I can
Self-control
study.
here, so help me out.
Yes, help me, help you, help me, please. Right. So yeah, a lot of it is just being, humbling yourself and being willing to be vulnerable and honest with people about what your needs are. And just, you just have to find your tribe, Yes.
Especially if you are, have aspirations that require time and things like that. Like, I think that there's always, and I remind myself too of like this beauty in the whole journey, because I can remember being in the library and seeing Elijah like in the room with you. I've been in the study room with you and Elijah's just over there, like,
Yeah.
like this is what juggling looks like. And I'm so glad that you like mentioned that word, because I've said that before. Like I remember listening to a speaker and I asked about, balancing, and she just kind of like laughed me out the room, low key, Mikey, like balance? What?
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's not balance, it's juggling.
Yes.
Sometimes it's one thing's up and the other thing's coming down, and you catch it and you throw it back up, and that's
Yes.
just how it goes. And so I tell you all the time, but I'll tell you again that I admire you so much in all that you do. I think that you are an amazing person. I think that you are super inspirational to other people, to other moms. And I think that you do an awesome job. Like you really do an awesome job, because Elijah is an awesome little human being. Like, I'm proud
Thank you,
of you and all that
Ashley.
you do. I am honored that you came to
Go
talk.
on. No, and I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And the feeling is completely mutual. I know that your followers may not know this completely, but Ashley is an absolute Wonder Woman. She tries to act like I do something. No, this woman travels across state lines every single day to go to school. She lives in Mississippi and yet goes to school in New Orleans. Had a 10-month-old when she started school, was pumping
Yeah, oh,
between classes.
yeah.
Like I couldn't even fathom. I had to wait till my kid was 12 before I was ready to go to school. He was like, we good. I got one right here. Let's go. Let's go. You are such an inspiration. Every single time I think about your story, that's what gives me the energy to keep going. I'm like, if Ashley can do this, I mean, come on. I had a 10-minute bike ride home. Like, oh my gosh, no,
No,
I'm so
well,
in awe.
really,
Yes.
like one minute you're inspiring somebody else, and like you're being inspired by people. Like you see
Yes.
people and you're like, wow, that is so awesome. Like, and so I am proud to call you an actual friend. Like briefly about wanting to do your blog, and I talk about what that is and what you plan on doing with that. And
Yeah, so my blog is the same as my Instagram. It's Modern Lady Vibes, and it's still a little baby work in progress, but the goal is just to be able to share everything that I've learned in my lifetime with people out there so that they can be inspired or they can learn something. I've been a financial advisor, I'm in grad school, been a single mom, I've been vegan for 3 years. I mean, all of these things are stories, and I just want to share my stories with other people in hopes of being able to provide something that they can use to either learn from my mistakes or just get one extra leg ahead of me, whatever it is. I just want to inspire and help others. So it's the idea is learning how to be, or defining what a modern lady is in the 21st century.
so much, Andrea, for stopping by, chatting with us, providing us so much inspiration, so much motivation. You've motivated me. I'm gonna go like figure out something to do with myself now. So thank you, girl, and see you later.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.